All right, everybody, let's get ready to start. Good afternoon and welcome to the November 16th, 2021 public comment session. Time is now 5:30 and we will begin. Because the board has had a number of public comment opportunities, to prevent any confusion, I'd like to remind that the public comment today is for 30 minutes and for the 30 minutes that normally occurs before a regular board meeting. Public comment provides the opportunity to bring issues of interest to the attention of the Board of Education. It's an opportunity for the board to listen. As a general rule, the board does not respond to speakers. All speakers are asked to sign in advance by contacting our board secretary, sarah.dalkey@spps.org, or calling 612-434-1105, or online via the public comment form. Public comment signing ends at 5:30. The order in which speakers will be called are students first, speakers referencing an agenda-related item, and then others in the order of the names received, with preference given to those who have not spoken in the past 3 months. After you have spoken, please send your comments to the board secretary or email it to them, or you may leave them with our ombudswoman, Dana Abrams. Speakers are advised that any complaint or issue related to personnel must be made in writing. For your own legal protection and the legal rights of staff, please do not include identifiers of St. Paul Public Schools, such as names, job titles, grades taught, or work location. Each presentation will be timed. When time is up, speakers are asked to complete their statement immediately. If the presentation exceeds time, speakers may be muted. Time allotted may be reduced to allow as many speakers as possible to offer their comments within the 30 minutes allocated. Tonight, speakers are allowed 2 minutes to speak. Speakers are asked to be respectful when making their presentations. Any disrespectful conduct by a speaker will result in forfeiting their speaking time. Audience members are likewise expected to be respectful of speakers. Please begin tonight by stating your name only. No additional information, such as address, is needed. And our first speaker of tonight is Mullinish Kane. We'll circle back around. Next is Asia Anderson.
Hi, my name's Asia. I just want to thank you guys for this opportunity, and thank you, Dana, for your assistance. Families are crying out for help. All parents keep getting this, oh, this is a pandemic, and be gracious and give us time. Change must come. The protectors failed to protect us, failed to serve, well, at least mine's, at least my family. Nationwide, Black parents are reporting their challenging experiences with the kids within SPPS. I've been crying, praying, reaching out, emailing, calling, and texting for help. Right here in the district I graduated from, that I currently have served for the past 15 years, and put trust to serve the most valuable people in my life, my children. My son recently had 125 absences, all while present at school. Where is Sam, otherwise known as the School Attendance Matters, as I continue to cry for help? So I hear SPPS attendance support has 3 steps, which are more serious if a student continues to be absent. After 3 unexcused absences, parents receive an attendance letter. That never happened. Then if the student continues to be absent without an excuse, the school will have an intervention process as the follows. Group meeting with the parents at school, where someone from Ramsey County Attorney's Office explains school attendance laws. That never happened. Students Attendance Review Team, otherwise known as SART, has a hearing to develop a plan to develop attendance. That never happened. And last, the last step 3, a court hearing. That never happened. I decided to pull my son out of Central High School as of November 12th, and he ran away from school. That is the last time I've seen my son. I want to thank the few staff that have supported my son. They know who they are. Once again, I thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you, Asia. Next speaker is Abdi Barkat.
Yes, good evening. Another night, another problem. So let's talk tonight again. Highwood Hills has long history for the quality education. A lot of young people graduated for that school for past 30 years. Most of them, they were Somalis. Uh, some of them, they are nurses, doctors, engineers, U.S. Army Forces, Navy. I am a parent, and I have two kids go to that school, and one is going next year for pre-K. District needs to communicate effectively with Somali parents. We need to hire more outreach officers, bilingual. We need to hire more people who can help us for the after school programming. If you need that school to be open, if you decide to be open that school, you need to hire more people work after school programs to create competition with the charter schools. Most of you here, you don't know nothing about that school, and none of you visit there. Jackie Turner, she wrote the Binary Press. 175 students go to that school, which is a lie. 225 people go to that school. I have that data here. You need to go and do your own research. We need that school has rounded well education. They had Somali language. They cut that program, and the people running away. So you need to create a new curriculum with some Somali language, math, and after-school program. We don't need to close that school. It locates a safe place, and it connects community to the rest of the city. And again, I'm talking to the board members. They came to our home, Channel Foster. I supported you last time. I fought for you, but now you doing to destroy our school, and you leave a legacy for here. Suki, I worked for you with Beth Commerce, your campaign, and you lie us, and you saying I am working with the color of the people. And that's not true. Be honest, your action is, and don't close that school. I fired district court and St. Paul, you.
Thank you, Abdi. Next speaker is Stephanie Anderson. Stephanie Anderson. We can circle back. Next is Christine Hauser. Next is Julianne Clavbain.
Good afternoon, Board of Directors and Superintendent. My name is Julianne Kvalbein, and I spoke to you last Thursday and would like to follow up on what has transpired since the presentation of Envision SPPS in October. People are becoming increasingly frustrated, as you just heard, as many questions have been asked, but so far there have been no responses. I would like to add some more questions for you to consider. How much funding will be saved by this plan? What will be the impact on the students and community? The district has talked about community schools in recent years, but are community schools no longer of value to SPPS? Is the administration saying that they know better than students and families what these students and families need? Has administration shared with you how this plan will be evaluated because the community has not been told? In the future, the district will need to go to the community for more funding. Do you think you'll get it? That the district readily admits to losing students to charter schools. What do charter schools offer? The most common response is small class size and a sense of community. Is this proposal pushing them away and further reducing student enrollment in SPPS? And since I have a few more seconds, I didn't get to tell an anecdote last week. I volunteer at LEAP High School and with students reading with them. And last week, there were 2 new Afghani students in that class, and we were in the library, and the librarian gave the student his number to check out books and everything. This is his first day. And so she says, okay, punch in your number. And he did. He just did it. And the other students in his class that were standing by him started applauding because this was his first day and he got it right away. Would that happen in any of the other high school in St. Paul?
Thank you, Julianne. All right, next speaker is Tanya Drawn. Circle back. Next one is Peter Hendricks.
Good evening. Yes, there's an enrollment problem and a money problem in St. Paul Public Schools, but Envision SPPS needs a reboot. First, I want to know where the SEEB student members are. They're not here. Last night, Director Vu asked for a list of schools that have a well-rounded education. Director Anderson said he couldn't answer the question because it's complicated and there's different funding sources. Chief of Schools Collins said that all schools are well-rounded because of ARP funding. Chief Turner said a list of schools would be provided. I asked for that list, and Envision did email me this afternoon. The list has 26 schools. And guess what? Wellstone is on that list. Do you find that ironic? You should. The public is tired of misinformation, no information, confusing information, and hearing administration tell the board and the public to vote first on closing schools, and then we will heal and engage these communities. Scrap SPPS, Envision SPPS. Students are suffering enough trauma this fall, and it is clear that SPPS is having some serious issues supporting these students. Take a look at the student-led walkouts at Central High School, where my daughter attends, Highland Park High School, both over allegations of sexual assault. And now a student is charged with sexually assaulting another student at Johnson. As a board, you have a statutory duty over the general charge of the business of St. Paul Public Schools, its schools, and of the interests of these schools. You need to ask the questions of administration and demand answers. The superintendent and the leadership of this district report to you, not the opposite. You have a moral duty to the voters and the students. I agree, it's an awesome responsibility. Please restart the plan of consolidating schools and programs right now. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter. Next speaker is Sherry Albrecht.
My name is Sherry Albrecht, and I am commenting regarding COVID quarantine policy. The school's COVID policies do not reflect actual risks to children, especially young children, from COVID, especially when weighed against demonstrable harms that come from unpredictable quarantines and so-called remote learning. Every teacher, staff person, every adult in these kids' lives has had ample opportunity to get vaccinated. School employees have had the chance to get boosters. Young kids are starting to get vaccinated. The school's policies need to change to reflect the changing risks. With the school's current quarantine policies, the effect of more testing is more quarantines, more days missed. Did you know there are schools where rapid tests are used to keep kids in school? A negative result on a rapid test can keep a kid in school and avoid the chaos and waste of an unnecessary quarantine. I'm not talking about Florida. I'm talking about Massachusetts and Maryland. If the schools have COVID prevention money to spend, they should direct their money toward mitigations that reduce the risk of infection and allow kids to be safe at school, such as improved ventilation. If the schools purchase COVID tests, they should use tests to promote learning, not quarantines. The school's current policies are teaching children and families that education is not important and that it is optional. Thank you.
Thank you, Sherry. Next speaker is M.K. Wynn.
Good evening, Superintendent Goddard and members of the board. My name is M.K. Wynn. I'm a parent at Maxfield Elementary School, St. Paul Public School District. Can I just breathe real quick? So for the past 5 weeks, I've been invited to listening sessions that have been held by the school district. I ask questions like, why aren't we, I ask questions about how data has been gathered and collected to make the determinations that you did in your Envisions plan. And this is what I'm speaking to right now. When I asked I guess like what I learned from attending listening sessions, observing and experiencing listening sessions as a parent, there's this gnawing question, right, that emerges in me every time I attend one is why were the experiences, our bodies, our embodied wisdom, our stories, why was that not included, right, as one of the data points that you use to determine what you determined in your proposal, right? And why is it that I think what was told to me is that 5 years worth of data has been collected, gathered, made meaning out of, and then the proposals came from that, right? And what I wonder in my head is, okay, so this proposal is out, and you allowed parents and community to offer 5 weeks of input, right? And then I know that the vote is going to be delayed December 1st, but it was meant for today, right? So after 5 weeks of community input, like when do you have time to include the input into this particular data point, our stories and our experiences, and what will come after, right? I got you. Thank you so much for your time. All right, bye.
Thank you, MK. All right, next speaker is Jonathan Price.
My name is Jonathan Price. I'm here to discuss the recent issues at St. Paul Central High School, where I have a granddaughter who's a junior there. And it's concerning to me when I get a text message from her that says, "Papa, can you come get me because I'm scared because they're fighting all over the school." When I arrive, the school is in lockdown. School is in lockdown. St. Paul police are everywhere. Things have got to change there. My granddaughter during dinner one evening said, "Papa, I'm stressed. We don't know if fights are going to happen in lunchroom, the hallways, the classroom." High school is already stressful enough for these students. And to have to deal with safety issues on top of that, that should be unacceptable to you as a board. It certainly is to me as a grandparent who've been paying property taxes in the city of St. Paul. So I ask of you, do something that provides assistance to John Robinson and his colleagues in terms of providing a safe environment for these children to go to school. Thank you.
Thank you, Jonathan. Next speaker is Sarah Haig.
Tonight, I'm here to speak to you regarding Envision SPPS. I'm a parent of a kindergartner at Wellstone. My daughter just finished an art rotation, which she said was her favorite subject. Last week, she found out she would be starting a science rotation today, and she was over the moon excited. She has shared with me about how the school counselor has taught her to focus and talk about feelings. In her world cultures classes, she's learned about South American countries, and on top of all that, I think she has learned more Spanish in 2 months than I did in 2 years of high school Spanish. When members of the Wellstone community have asked, why is our school being closed when it is already sustainably sized and already providing a well-rounded education, we have been told that all students should have a well-rounded education. I agree, but what I am struck by is that only a portion of the SPPS community is being asked to take on this burden. Some neighborhoods in the city will have multiple schools dismantled and reconfigured, while other areas of the city will be untouched. Those who have spoken before me have covered gaps in the data that have been collected and presented. They have highlighted the inequities in the plan and spoken passionately about the importance of their schools and communities. They have demonstrated how their schools are already providing the well-rounded education that SPPS seeks to create. They have called out the lack of planning for what new schools will provide, how staff will be supported, how transportation will be covered, or whether students of affected schools will be able to get into a new school of their choice. They've pleaded for more time and to be included in the process. Tonight, I add my voice and ask you to vote no on the Envision SPPS proposal.
Thank you, Sarah. Next speaker is Suleiman Ahmad.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Sulaiman Ahmed. I'm new American, just 4 years in this country. I was been residing West St. Paul, but right now, currently, I move East St. Paul, whereby right now I reside for McKnight area. The reason why I even moved there, my family, my children, 3 children, and wife just came right now, like a year ago. I think, I think so, yeah, a year ago. So my plan was to enroll my children, since I am the one only who's driving and my wife is still, she don't know how to drive. Then the plan was just to move that McKnight area and then my children to enroll Highwood Hill School. But when I heard this now, by the time I just moved in now, I was told this school had been about to close. And I was astonished really, and I was not feeling happy for sure. The reason why is there were a lot of Somali community in that area, specifically in McKnight area or in McKnight and Shamarok, all if you know in this area, there were thousands of thousands Somali. And if this school is closed, I think so it's kind of unfair and piously. Like, for instance, I know there's a lot of migrants in this area who wanted their children still to enroll in the future. And I know already another family who are about to also come this side and enroll their children to this specific school that I mentioned at Highwood School. Then to me, I think so really as a community or as a Somali, specifically in my community, it's unfair to close that specifically school because of we are moving in this area, and if that school closed, I think so the district could have think again and talk to those community, specifically these parents. My opinion, really, by the time I was moving here, I wanted my children to enroll. They moved from Highland Park, and I was been planning them to put in Highwood Hill, but now you are closing, so I think so it need to be reconsidered, and the district to think that those new people who joined this area currently. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Suleiman. Next speaker is Yuba Shire.
Hello, my name is Uba Shure. I was not planning to speak, but I got excited after I heard everyone else. I am speaking on behalf of the Highwheel Hills community. They are very concerned, and their concern is they don't get the word, they don't communicate with the other world and other community because they don't speak the language. So that is what they're asking. They just surprisingly got this message after they went through 2 years of horrible COVID. And now they find out their school is closing. And that's not only school, it's a community. So they're very sad about that. They find out just now after the decision has been made. They are asking this to be reconsidered. And they're asking to get the information in their language because most of them don't speak English and don't read or write English. So that was the message I've been given. I'm one of the interpreters also, so I always find out their concern, and I'm very sad about that. Even though my kids don't go that specific school, I have kids that goes to St. Paul School. Thank you for your time, and have a great night.
Thank you, Yuba. Next speaker is Coral Burge.
Good evening, everyone. I'm here to speak on behalf of LEAP Language Academy. I've been a volunteer at LEAP for a number of years. I've done art projects with them. I do art a lot. We've done puppet shows and made dolls in authentic costumes. And I've been amazed at the creativity and the companionship that students experience in projects like that. LEAP is a school that offers a lot of ingenuity. The teachers are dedicated and the students feel at home. I'm also a retired adult educator, and one of the things that I learned early on is that if students have a negative emotion like fear, that impedes their learning. At LEAP, they have a community. They have teachers that care, students that want to get to know them. And I think that that's a marvelous community for them to start out in. I think our diversity is our strength in this country. And I think we need to do all that we can for students coming to this country from all over the world and wanting to make Minnesota their home. Please do not close LEAP. Thank you.
Thank you, Coral. All right, we're circling back around now. Mulanish Kane. Stephanie Anderson. Christine Hauser. Tanya Drawn.
Hello, Superintendent and Board. So this is my third time coming up this week about the Envision Plan, but I just wanted to let you know some interesting facts that I discovered. After the last meeting, I called out to a couple of the schools that are going to be closed, Gaultier, Johnny Johnson, Obama, and Jackson. And what I was finding out is I was saying, hey, I see all these parents here from all these other schools. Why don't I see more representation for your schools? And they said, we have an issue getting to the listening sessions. We have an issue getting to the board. We don't know what parents are going to do. They're confused. They don't know what's going to happen. They don't know what's going to happen with their kids next year. And they really just need a helping hand. So I want to let you know that there's tons of parents out there that have not been able to use their voice. Sorry, I'm losing my voice today. But there's tons of parents out there that have not been able to use their voice, have not been able to come here to voice their opinion about you closing their schools. They're confused, they're angry, and on top of that, their children have just suffered a tremendous trauma the last couple of years. And they don't think they can add more stress onto their family, onto their children, and still be able to thrive. So I'm imploring you to take a break, to delay the vote, to think of some alternatives to closing these schools, and really give a chance for all these parents to give you their opinion. Obama doesn't need to close. It needs to be restructured. Those kids do not need to be put into a different school. J.J. Hill should not be taken over. Johnny Johnson is a wraparound service school. You have all these services that parents can get to right there in the school. If you're a parent that does not have a job, if you have a parent that does not have housing, they can go to Johnny Johnson and get those resources there. These are what is vital for our community to thrive, and so I'm asking you to vote no to the Envision Plan. Thank you.
Thank you, Tanya. That was the last speaker. Time is 6 o'clock, and that's all. Seeing that there are no more speakers, I adjourn the public comment session and remind that the board and the community that our regular meeting of the board starts at 6:05 p.m. via live stream. Thank you.
Good evening and welcome to November 16th, 2021. I'm looking for someone specifically. Regular meeting of the Board of Education. The time is now 6:07 p.m. and we will begin with a roll call conducted by Vice Chair Wu.
Director Allen,
Here.
Director Kopp,
Here.
Director Carrillo. Here. Director Vu, I'm here. Director Foster,
Here.
Director Broderick.
Here.
Director Ellis.
Here.
Next, I'd like to move the order of the main agenda. Do I have a second? Thank you. That motion was seconded by Director Ellis. Vote, please.
Director Allen,
Yes.
Director Kopp,
Yes.
Director Carrillo,
Yes.
Director Ellis is yes, Director Vu,
Yes.
Director Foster,
Yes.
Director Broderick.
Yes.
Motion passes 7 votes unanimously. Next, and I will ask you guys to just kind of bear with me. The coughing and stuff is residual of my COVID. I am not contagious, but my lungs were affected, and so talking takes energy and breath. So, next, I'd like to move the report of the main agenda with the exception of C7, request for permission to contract with St. Paul Youth Services for Behavior Specialist Program Support SY 2021. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. That motion was seconded by Vice Chair Boo. Vote, please.
Director Allen,
Yes.
Director Kopp,
Yes.
Director Carrillo,
Yes.
Director Ellis is yes, Director Vu,
Yes.
Director Foster,
Yes.
Director Broderick.
Yes.
Thank you. That motion passes unanimously, 7 votes. Next, I'd like to move to approve the order of these main meetings. Minutes of the special meeting of the Board of Education on October 11th, 2021. Minutes of the special closed meeting of the Board of Education on October 18th, 2021. Minutes of the regular Board of Education meeting on October 19th, 2021. Minutes of the special closed meeting of the Board of Education on November 1st, 2021. Minutes of the special election canvassing meeting of the Board of Education on November 9th, 2021. Minutes of the special closed meeting of the Board of Education on November 15th, 2021. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. That motion was seconded by Director Allen. Vote, please.
Director Allen,
Yes.
Director Kopp,
Yes.
Director Carrillo,
Yes.
Director Ellis is yes, Director Vu,
Yes.
Director Foster,
Yes.
Director Broderick.
Yes.
Thank you. That motion passes unanimously, 7 votes. Next on the agenda is committee votes, and I will turn it over to Vice Chair Vu.
Thank you, Chair Foster. Currently, we're working with Committee of the Board meeting minutes from November 9th. There will be a report of the meeting minutes at the next BOE meeting. Therefore, there are no COB minutes to approve at this time, or at least to read at this time. I move that the board accept the report on the November 9th, 2021. I motion that the board accept the report on the November 9th, 2021 Committee of the Board meeting and approve the, okay, that's right. Okay, apologize. That motion was made in error. There are no committee reports from the November 9th meeting. Thank you.
All right. With no reports, we'll move on to the next area, which is the superintendent report, and I'll turn it over to you, Superintendent Gothard.
Good evening, Chair Foster, members of the board. First and foremost, on behalf of the board and our staff, Chair Foster, it is great to have you back. And I know you're smiling under that mask, and we all are with you and are patient with you, but happy that you have your health behind you and you're able to join us in this really important work. And also, congratulations on your election victory as well. So great to have you back. And as it turns, we are now going to turn our attention to COVID-19 with an update tonight. Members of the board, it's been a challenging first quarter of the year. The numbers of positive cases have continually increased each week. And they really have. And I think instead of speculating as to reasons why, I want to share tonight with you what we're doing. The positive cases, even though they're distributed throughout our 60 plus schools and other SPPS buildings, the impact has most definitely been felt. I've continued to be engaged with colleagues around the metro, through the state, through the Council of Great City Schools. They provide incredible support and a place to share so many difficult challenges. There's also not a lot of answers. There really isn't. Almost 2 years into doing this, while it's apparent that we faced many situations together, even that collective wisdom sometimes does not have the answers to how to do, just these next steps. Through all that, however, I'm really appreciative of your support as a Board of Education. I think you've put a tremendous amount of trust in our staff. All of us know it isn't perfect, but I would put our response and the work that we're doing, the commitment that we have for a district our size up with anyone, and that work is led by many, but chief among them is Director of Health and Wellness, Mary Langworthy. I'm going to turn it over to her momentarily. Her team, our school and district staff responsible for tracing, testing, vaccination, PPE, and so much more. Thank you all so very much. Tonight I asked Director Langworthy to come before you for some general comments about the COVID realities we were facing as a school district. Following her comments and any questions you might have, I'll have Chief Baker provide an update on our quarterly report that we said we would bring back to you as well in terms of our mask mandate and other important information pertaining to our response to COVID. Mary, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Dr. Gothard. Chair Foster, members of the board, Superintendent Gothard, this is a really tough time in our schools right now. As Dr. Gothard mentioned, I feel like we want to have answers and we don't have a lot of them. We are not alone in this. It's every district around us, across the state, across the nation that's struggling. Our case rates have been going up, a little bit of MEA fallout, a little bit of change in weather, a little bit of more testing happening, and when you have more testing, you're going to have more positive cases that come from that. We have some challenging conversations that are happening in the buildings because as the cases go up, the fear again kind of goes up among staff and among kids and among families. I get complaints and concerns and questions from a variety of people on both sides of it that, we're not doing enough and we're doing too much, and let the kids be alone and just be in school. And there's no perfect solution to any of this. So as Dr. Gothard mentioned, I think we're trying a lot of strategies, all the layered prevention that we keep talking about, wearing the masks, staying home when you're sick, report your positive cases. We're doing a lot of contact tracing, which thankfully is not completely on my team alone. I have to say our administrators are carrying a lot of the heavy burden of that. Last spring when we did contact tracing, a lot of that occurred through my COVID team, where they would handle and address and identify close contacts and inform the building. And this year we really shifted to looking at the building level where we could have translated information in advance that was prepared, but really having the building identify so that they could have a little bit more of an immediate response when we knew we had a positive case. But that weighs heavily at the building levels. There's just so many competing priorities that are happening. The challenges with behavior in the school and social emotional issues, kids that are trying to learn but don't know how to because they've been out of school for a long time, people that are stressed and having their own challenges in their personal lives, which makes it even more complicated. I can speak to my staff. We have people that are out for, maternity leaves, illness, injuries, other complications going on in their life. And in a normal year, that could be okay. But then when you add on COVID on top of that, it just gets really hard to keep up with the staffing challenges. And I think the burden that people feel every day and just that chronic fatigue that's happening. So I don't have any particular data to share other than case rates are up. We are, I think, doing a lot of hard work here. It is not perfect. We make mistakes in a lot of buildings every day. And I tell my team regularly to have grace with yourself and with other people because we're trying our best. But when you're fatigued and you're working really hard and you have, again, those competing priorities, mistakes will happen. And sometimes we have forgiveness from others and sometimes we don't. And that's really hard, I think, as nurses to keep hearing, a parent yelling at us, for example, because, we made the wrong decision, when we're all trying the best that we can. I have checked in with districts around us. We remain one of the only districts around that are doing contact tracing. And that in particular, I've been doing a lot of, I want to say, soul searching around to see if we can sustain that, because that is a big burden at the building level when you have a positive case. Really working to truly identify close contacts from that situation is really hard. And then noting what is the impact of that decision. There's going to be many kids that are quarantined and sent home. And of those kids, how many are actually going to develop COVID from that particular case? The number is pretty low, but we're trying to reduce spread. But there will be a number that are over-identified, and I've shared this with a number of administrators recently. I think the fatigue is leading to our administrators unfortunately having to make a decision to maybe quarantine an entire class, where before we might have been able to really dig in and figure out who were the actual close contacts. And now it's just really hard to get to all of that. And so the decision is, hey, let's go full class and be a little more conservative. But it's a big challenge to try and keep up with it. So just really needing to have some further conversation with our senior leadership about our ability to maintain that and how that might look differently. I had honestly hoped to hopefully delay that decision until we could get more of our kids vaccinated, but we're not quite there yet. I'll switch to vaccines. The good thing is we did start our vaccine clinics this week. I was at both Como Park Elementary yesterday and Battle Creek Elementary today. Great turnout. We're fully booked for these two clinics, have many appointments booked for the next clinics, and then we've partnered with a number of other organizations to offer more vaccines. We have 9 schools in total right now that will be hosting vaccine clinics across each area in the district. So that's a great opportunity for our kids to go locally to get vaccinated, which, as we've shared, is our best way to end the pandemic and trying to get kids the shots that they need. So lots of good results tonight. Not many unhappy kids, which was really good to see. But the vaccine efforts are paying off and people are showing up, which is fantastic. Our goal would be to get as many kids vaccinated prior to winter break to put us in a good spot for January as well. And then I'm only a piece of the vaccine and testing program. We do have people within HR that have been hired to manage that process. We have about 68% of our employees are vaccinated across the district. And the good thing is, from that testing for the unvaccinated, we are getting positive results that are being reported now. So that requirement to test weekly for those unvaccinated have been good. We're getting those reports and following up and excluding those employees when they do test positive. So I think that's been a successful program with a few hiccups along the way as well. Not sure if there's any other specific updates you'd like to hear or just ask questions.
Director Langworthy, one other thing that the board gets emails on often, and myself included on some, testing. Can you just explain the different ways that we're using tests? Can children take them home? Can staff take them home? Things like that? Yeah,
that's great. Thank you. So last week we rolled out the Binax Now over-the-counter rapid test kits for students. It's a program that was grant funded through the state. We have now delivered out all of those test kits to the schools. So each school has the ability to send home test kits. Our priority is sending home test kits with sick students. We have 35,000 kits, which sounds like a high number, but if we gave one away to every student, they'd be gone tomorrow. So I've asked my staff to prioritize for those students that are sick. And then certainly if we know of hardships in getting to testing, if we have multiple siblings at home, being able to send home like 7 test kits so that the entire family could get tested. But those are all prioritized around students. And then we have our vault test kits, which are not rapid, but those are available to staff right now on a weekly basis, typically on a Tuesday that we're doing testing. So testing is another great way that we are recommending weekly testing for everybody. Again, COVID is all around us, and many times we have people that don't have symptoms. So being able to test and find out that you have COVID and be able to exclude and make sure we're reducing that risk of spread is important.
With that, I will open up questions to board members. Questions, comments. Director Allen.
Hi, thank you for the report. I've been getting some reports from paraprofessionals that say that, I understand that we can't give out total information, but the teachers are being notified that they've come in contact, but yet the para who's in the same room with them are not being notified that they've come in contact. And this is just another one of those, hierarchy type situations, but this is life and death in this situation. And so I really want to encourage you to make sure that you're notifying everyone that could have possibly come in contact, because we really don't know, who those people are running, going back home to, or what kind of disabilities they might carry themselves. And we just need to really be careful. So that's one. Two, I also want to understand what the exceptions are. So I know that if you haven't been vaccinated, you get tested weekly. But what if you can't wear a mask and you're not vaccinated? Is it like, we have staff in our buildings that are maskless and unvaccinated. And is that safe for the students that they're coming in contact with? And is that okay? What's another protocol that we could possibly use in that situation to mitigate the risk?
Through the chair, Director Allen, as far as notifications, so we do have a checklist that each of our building teams will follow to make sure we're looking to include all those people that might have been close contacts. So truly, we really are looking at who might have had close contact with that positive case. In certain circumstances, the paras that are coming in and out of the room maybe actually have less exposure possibility because they might be floating more routinely. And might not have had that prolonged close contact with that individual. It can be more challenging for people that either push into classrooms or that are bopping from one classroom to another to always remember to include them. And so that does come from the building level. I would say if there's particular concerns happening, it's helpful to me to know what building so that I can work with the administrator and with that team to help address it. There certainly have been challenges in buildings and we've worked through them. We've re-clarified. There's been some misinterpretations of our guidelines and then we've worked to walk it through again. And some have had more practice in it and some have not had much practice at all. We just had a building this week that had their first positive case this week. And so they've been out of practice for a number of months. So coming back to it and refreshing your brain and understanding what that looks like can look very different. But having me know what the problem issues or where those buildings are, I can work through those then together. And then exceptions, is your question around exceptions to quarantine or exceptions to what specifically?
Well, exceptions to the mask mandate and then the vaccination. It would be a combo of both. It's just, they don't wear a mask and they're not vaccinated. So I understand that they're tested regularly, but what's the risk in that?
Right. So if it's a staff member that is unable to wear a mask, they would need to work through HR to get a mask exemption. And so that would be a medical form that we need to be filled out and working with HR. It certainly puts the individuals that maybe work in contact with that employee at additional risk, but that's why we have the additional layers of, hand washing throughout the day, staying home when you're sick, encouraging vaccinations for people. We know we have many students in special education that cannot wear a mask either. And so the staff that are working in close contact with them are given additional PPE so that they have additional protective layers as well. It's not perfect, but it's all about layered strategies. And so we work to try and address those issues and make sure that people that have the exemptions get them and people that don't, we need to keep strategizing, wearing the correct mask. I know that there's not always great compliance and there's issues in some buildings and others are really compliant. So it looks really different across the district.
So we don't incorporate, and I guess this is a question for Dr. Gothard, we don't incorporate the option of giving them the option for online school in that situation. It seems like we would be making accommodations that would be safe for everyone. We have that option. We have a lot of teachers that move to online school. Why wouldn't that be an option for this particular teacher?
Through the chair and Director Ellen, I'd have to know more specifically about the individual. And if they've worked through HR through that process, there may be a reason why. I just might not be aware.
I guess I just want to understand the process that allows them to be unvaccinated and unmasked and encountering students. I don't need to know like specifics, and I don't want to say specifics here, but I do want to know what is that process that allows, in the midst of a pandemic, a staff to be unmasked and unvaccinated and still interacting with students.
Yeah, and Director Allen, I invite Executive Director McCarty to maybe do some follow-up work. Maybe we can share some more information so I can understand, is this one person, is this widespread throughout, and what steps we would take. As Director Langworthy said, of course, we want to ensure that everyone in any situation like that would have the layered mitigation that she mentioned. But I can look into your request a little bit more specifically.
And I would add additionally, with 68% of our employees are vaccinated, that's another 32% that aren't. And I'm sure we cannot afford to move 32% of our employees over to the online school. So we will still have an issue where some staff will need to be in the buildings, and we don't have a staffing requirement for vaccines. We have a vaccine and testing program. And so where those that are unvaccinated, they are getting tested weekly, which should reduce that risk and help identify it earlier if they do have COVID.
But we do have a mask mandate.
We do. Other than
so we have 38% of our staff that are wearing masks? No, I'm sure it's just a few of them that could possibly go to online school. That's my point. Others? Director Carrillo.
Yep. I just had one question, which is I'd like you to reiterate protocol, and I don't want to necessarily go into a long scientific conversation about exposure and incubation periods, but we're getting parents who are asking about that time frame, the 10-day time frame for the how do you call it, the quarantine, and the possibility of shortening it with testing. I want you to help us understand again the criteria and the reasoning for the 10 days quarantine, the guidance behind it.
Right. Thank you. Through the chair, Dr. Carrillo. So we know a person that has COVID-19 might not even have symptoms yet and still can be infectious. And so that full length of time is 14 days. Based on what we've seen with the data, after day 10, the likelihood of them being infectious or spreading that to other people goes down. In the spring, we were following the mandates from the state, the executive order. We had a requirement to follow the decision tree from the Minnesota Department of Health. At that time, we had a 14-day quarantine for people. At that time, there was a change where we as a district could make some shifts in our decision making, and if we wanted to do a 14-day, a 10-day, or do a 7-day where you could test out if you did not have symptoms yet. We made some review of the data. We looked at our population in St. Paul, looked at the number of students we have, the large population we have, the complexities of our district, and we went with a 10-day quarantine period, partly to be on par with an isolation period when you test positive is 10 days, and having a message where quarantine is also 10 days was easier to follow, easier for our staff to follow, easier for families to follow, easier to track and know where we're at with timing. Some districts decided to do the 7-day test out. Frankly, it's more complicated for us to be able to follow that. And when I look at people that have the ability to test, it's not our families that are more challenged, right? We have many families that don't have access to transportation, have language barriers, don't know where to go to get testing. Giving the 7-day test out affords more luxury to people that have the ability to get and access those tests. And so we switched to a 10-day quarantine last spring. We've stuck with that 10-day quarantine in general, except for when we've maybe had more than one case or a number of cases in a building, we might have extended a quarantine to 14 days for a particular classroom to try and reduce that further spread. So 10 days is really when you should be watching for symptoms when you've been exposed. Up to 14 days is when you could potentially develop symptoms still. I think the 10-day is a good compromise. I know I've had many requests for why aren't we doing a 7-day? I've had the opposite of why aren't we doing more? I feel like the 10 is a good compromise, and in general, it's in line with most districts around us. I would say some districts are recommending quarantine, not requiring it. I believe Minneapolis, last I had checked, I feel like they were doing a 14-day quarantine. The additional piece that I get pushback on, and I think there's questions always on, are if I have a family of 5 kids, if I test positive, my kids might not only be out for 10 days, but they could be out for multiple days beyond that, because the isolation or that quarantine period does not start until the isolation period is done for the person that tested positive in that household. So if I test positive today, I have to wait 10 days. My kids, now it doesn't start until day 11 for them as their day 1, if that makes sense. So it really can extend and extend and extend. And this is where, you have to think of harm and risk and weigh it all into play. And I think the 10 is fair. I think sometimes it can be really hard for our larger families when we might have a child that's out for 20 plus days already at a time when they've been missing a lot of school. So it's not perfect and it's not great for every family, but we're looking at a public health pandemic here and trying to make the greater good decisions for our community.
And then I have a further question to that, or a follow up to that. When we let's assume in a hypothetical future when a majority of our students are vaccinated, and we start seeing a downtrend in cases, specifically in our classrooms with our kids. Do we then change those protocols to adapt, or are we going to stick to the 10 days until there's a general sense of, we're clear?
So through the chair, Director Creo, I think I'm just looking at our capacity to handle the contact tracing right now and whether we will be able to continue to do that through this winter. My hope was we would end that in January because of the increased vaccine rates. But if we end contact tracing, that means we are not identifying close contacts, which means we do not put people in quarantine. It ends with the individual that is sick, that is tested positive, and they're excluded. I have talked with other districts, and some districts are also excluding family members because we know there's additional risk. It's hard when you have someone with COVID in your home to not have other people within that household also get COVID. So that might be an additional exception or extension of that guideline. But right now, I just need more information and more processing and more conversations with our senior leadership to talk about what that might look like and what the new guidelines might be, and being able to communicate that out to people if we switch to that plan.
Thank you for the work you're doing on this, and I just want to reiterate to all of us as a community that we are in it together, and we can get over this hump. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions? I just asked one question that's asked a lot is, why can't SPPS vaccinate in all our schools? Can you talk about the challenges and barriers that, what is our capacity for that?
So Chair Foster, yes, lots of challenges. So right now, the people that would be able to vaccinate in our schools would be my staff. And this year with the return of a full enrollment, our buildings are full. We have the return of many students that have chronic health issues, asthma, allergies, seizures, diabetes, ADHD. We have many diabetics that have returned to our buildings this year. And with all those complex chronic health needs, my staff are pretty darn busy with handling all of the busyness of our health offices, on top of exclusions within the school. Can't tell you the number of schools I go in that we're working to isolate students and send them home, make sure they have test kits, make sure they have access to testing, make sure they understand what's going on. All of those complications just take a lot longer to communicate and share with families, with staff, to make sure everybody's informed. My staff do not have the capacity. I'm understaffed, and we have gaps every day that we're trying to fill. I have coaches that are supposed to be supporting my 20+ new staff over the last couple of years, and they're filling the gaps in the building because I don't have bodies. So then we look to our partners, right? And right now we have our clinics going with St. Paul Ramsey County Public Health, but we've also extended the asks out there, and we've had offers from many community partners to do vaccine clinics. And so that's where we have 9 schools now that are offering, and we're partnering with them to provide that, because frankly, my staff are burned out at the end of the day, and asking them to stay until 7 o'clock at night when all they've done is work and had no lunch, no bathroom break. It's really, really hard to expect that on top. Many will volunteer anyway, but they're burnt out, and many of our staff are burnt out.
Thank you for that. Dr. Gothard? Oh. Director Ellis.
Thank you, Mary. I appreciate all of this information. Just thinking back to the public comment about testing, and then you mentioned over-the-counter rapid test. So then how long does it take to get those results? Do families report those results to us? How does that happen? Sort of what is that process if we send home a kiddo who's not feeling well and they get this test?
Through the chair, Director Ellis. So the rapid test kits were meant to be sent home. When parents get the kit, the test takes about 20 minutes to get the result. We have videos and instructions that we're sending home with the students so that they can do the testing at home. When they get a positive, or if they get a positive result, they're asked to make a report to that red button, the COVID reporting system, so that our COVID team can follow up and make the exclusions and make the report to the state from there. If it's negative, then as long as their symptoms are improving and they're fever-free for at least 24 hours, they're okay to return to school. So it cuts down on the amount of time that a student might need to be out of school, which is fantastic. I also will say, because I have fantastic people in my staff, many of them, if they call a family member to come pick up their child, they'll offer to do the COVID test with the parent on site. If we did it on our own, we would have to have consent from a parent, which is a whole nother layered step. So instead of that, we can help support and assist that family, especially our families that don't speak English, being able to walk them through that test on site, and then they can help assist them in making a report if it is positive, and we know what our next steps are at that point as well.
And you said that this was grant funded by the state. So is that an allotted amount of tests for the year or for the life of a program? Like, how does that work?
Through the chair, Director Ellis. So we received 35,000 test kits. We were eligible for 1 test kit per enrolled student at a given date. I can't remember. I think it was last fall was the date we were given. So that's why we're prioritizing them for students that are sick or when we know there's hardships in getting testing, because I know many of our families reached out immediately and wanted to stock up with test kits at home just in case. And that's not what this program was built for. It's so that we can support especially our most needy families and making sure they have access to testing. So the 35,000 kits, when they're out, there is not a backup plan right now. I do not know if there'll be additional grant funding options or more testing kits offered down the road. But as of now, that program would end when they're gone. In addition, we've also ordered vault test kits, which are not rapid, but we are ordering test kits for use for employees and for students that will be coming here as well. So that's an additional backup plan that we could rely on as well. And then Roy Wilkins is another great local option for people to go for testing.
Okay, and then my last question is, you mentioned that the contact tracing and that might not be something we can continue to do. And so I'm just wondering, how many people do we have doing that now? And is that more or less than when we initially started contact tracing?
Through the chair, Director Ellis. So it looks different than what we did in the spring. In the spring, we didn't have as many cases and we didn't have as many students on site. So the reports were much less. So that was handled by my COVID team specifically, which is a team of health assistants or nurses, people with health experience. Now it happens at the building level where we get a report, a positive report. Our COVID team informs each of that building about the positive case. They now follow a checklist to help identify who would have had close contact with that individual, and then they inform at the building level. So that team generally is comprised of my staff, so a nurse or a health assistant or both. Usually a principal or an AP are involved, possibly a clerk or a counselor. It's a need-to-know team that they're holding confidential information, but it's typically a team of like 3 to 5 people, but it varies from building to building based on the setup that that particular administrator has put in place.
So then with everyone back and building, so is that more people you have on the team or is that less? You said that it was trouble staffing in the gaps. And so you said it was different because we didn't have our schools fully in session with all of our students because we still had virtual learning school. So now with everyone back, is the team larger than the spring, or it's like we have some additional staff people who are part of the team, but their support and not actually doing all of the tracing?
So through the chair, Director Ellis, so at the building level, these are part of another person's responsibilities. This is one of many jobs that they're doing. So it's not additional staff that are just doing this work. This is on top of counseling, on top of clerk duties, on top of principal duties, on top of nursing and health assistant duties. So we don't have specific staffing shortages at the building level for a COVID-related work. It's that this is on top of their normal job, that they're helping to support that effort at the building level. I did increase our staff time. We do have 7 people that are on staff for our COVID team that handles all the reports that are coming in at the district level to then, again, push that out to the building level.
Thank you.
Dr. Gothard.
Mary, thanks so much. At this time, I'd like to turn it over to Chief Baker to take you through a brief discussion on our Safe Learning Plan quarterly report.
Thanks, Dr. Gothard. Through the chair, board members, back on August the 17th, you adopted a use of mask mandate. And at that time, in that board resolution that you agreed to, that you would review the resolution as necessary. And it specifically highlighted different times. We are about a few days late from the time that was in there, but I know that everyone has been pretty busy with some other things. So we're coming before you now to say that based on the increase case rate that Director Langworthy brought up and Dr. Gothard, and also not having any additional requirements or changes from the CDC or the Minnesota Department of Health, that we are requesting as administration and Dr. Gothard that there be no changes and that we continue to keep the mask mandate or the resolution intact based on the support that is needed in the buildings. We believe it's the right thing to do at this time, and we don't want to change course now. So I will definitely be open to taking any questions, but there is no board action that is necessarily required at this time. It's just that we go through a formal process to review it and, of course, answer any questions that you have.
Thank you. Are there questions from members of the board? Is there a general consensus to continue this? Right. Thank you. Seems to be consensus. Dr. Gothard.
No, thank you. And I think it's important for us to state this publicly because there are some boards, and especially, not just here, but around the country, who are really peeling back some of their strategies right now. And I just want to let the community and staff to know that it hasn't even entered my mind. I look at the numbers. I work with Mary and others. I understand what Mary was describing in her report was this sense of when staffing came up by Director Ellis, this business as usual with this extra whole layer of COVID response taking place simultaneously. When you hear our staff say that they are burnt out, they're at their breaking point, it's that kind of added responsibility. And as all of you have stated in your own way, it's important as it is. It's not something that you can just decide today I'm going to do it, the next day I'm not. I mean, we have to be consistent and ready at all times. I was shocked to hear, and I want to learn more about the school that had their first case. I definitely want to see if we can learn something about that. And that was really, I don't want to say it's good, but it was really interesting to learn that we had one that made it that long. So thank you. I need to share with you, board members, that I mislabeled my sheet. So I gave to you the report that was supposed to be second. So I ask that you allow that change to take place, and I will now prepared a statement to read about Envision SPPS that will come next. As we announced last week, I would like to remind board members and the public that the vote on Envision SPPS has been rescheduled from tonight to Wednesday, December 1st. That meeting will begin at 6:05 with 30 minutes of public comment starting at 5:30 p.m. In addition, there will be a public hearing the night before the vote on Tuesday, November 30th, beginning at 5:30 p.m. Community members who wish to sign up for public comment at the hearing may do so when they arrive here at 360 Colborne. Since we first announced Envision SPPS as part of our strategic plan in February 2020, we've worked hard to bring together content experts and stakeholders to analyze the data and create a plan that would allow us to provide all of our students with access to a well-rounded education. I want to be clear that this plan started with data and not with any particular schools. Shortly after determining which schools would be part of the plan in September of this year, we announced our recommendations to the board on October 11th. Since then, we have provided board members and the public with answers to many important and thoughtful questions and have provided the time and space to listen to our school community so that you, board members, can make an informed vote. There will not be a formal presentation tonight. On December 1st, my administration will present you with the final comprehensive plan for Envision SPPS that prioritizes the academic growth of every student and supports our primary goal as a district of providing a culturally responsive, well-rounded education. I know this process has not been perfect. Closing schools and changing programs is never easy. No matter how it's done or what is ultimately decided, people will be unhappy. With that said, I continue to stand behind these recommendations, which align our strategic vision with our fiscal reality to address the decline in enrollment caused by decreased birth rates and growing competition from schools outside of St. Paul Public Schools. Over these past several weeks, I've heard a lot from board members regarding what else can be done to slow down and even reverse this enrollment trend. I look forward to working with my team to develop a recruitment and retention plan that will help ensure that more St. Paul families pick SPPS as the best choice for their child. I know how much all of you care about St. Paul Public Schools and our amazing students and staff. While this process is painful, we have an opportunity in front of us to prepare our school communities to continue providing strong educational programs even after the federal funding from the American Rescue Plan is gone. There is also an opportunity for us to get ready to welcome more of our youngest learners, to reimagine our cultural and magnet programs, and to provide more equitable experiences for students in special education programs. I want to reiterate to our staff that we will be there every step of the way to support our school communities throughout this transition, working with families to create the programs that all of our students need and deserve. I am also committed to developing and monitoring a monitoring system to measure our progress and keep ourselves accountable for our promise to deliver strong, well-rounded programs to all students. Finally, I want to thank each of you for your countless hours you have put into this process, including visiting schools and meeting with parents and staff, in addition to attending every meeting. I know you are tired and have put many things aside to prioritize this decision. We have 2 weeks between tonight and our next public meeting to catch up on sleep and get some time away from this boardroom. I truly appreciate everything you do for St. Paul Public Schools, and just again want to thank you, board.
Thank you for that. I'll open it up for any questions or comments from board members. Questions or comments? Questions or comments? Thank you, Dr. Gothard.
Thank you, Chair Foster. At this time, the final report tonight is to ask you to please approve the human resources transactions for the month of October.
With that, I would move to approve the human resource transactions for the dates of October 1st through October 31st, 2021. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. That motion was seconded by Director Ellis. Vote, please.
Director Allen?
Yes.
Director Kopp? Yes. Director Carrillo?
Yes.
Director Ellis is yes. Director Vu?
Yes.
Director Foster?
Yes.
Director Broderick?
Yes.
That motion passes unanimously. Thank you. Next, I'd like to move to approve all items within the consent agenda with the exception of item C7, request for permission to contract with St. Paul Youth Services for Behavioral Specialist Program, school year 2021-2022. Do I have a second?
Second.
Seconded by Director Ellis. Thank you. Vote, please.
Director Allen?
Yes.
Director Kopp? Yes. Director Carrillo?
Yes.
Director Ellis is yes. Director Vu?
Yes.
Director Foster?
Yes.
Director Broderick?
Yes.
Thank you. That motion passes unanimously with 7. Next is our consent items, and I'll give it over to floor to Vice Chair View, who requested this item to be pulled for a very specific reason. Vice Chair Vu, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Chair Foster. The reason why I pulled this consent agenda item is because since the start of this year, 2021, I started serving on the board of this organization. So I am a director for this nonprofit organization, St. Paul Youth Services. And that's why I pulled it. So I can't necessarily vote on the approval of this contract. That's it.
Any questions from board members? Any questions or comments? I would just ask that when your name is called, abstain.
Did I hear correctly? It's simply that Vice Chair Vu is saying he's recusing himself
He is.
from this vote?
Yes, he will abstain from this
Thank
vote
you.
as a conflict of interest. Any other questions for this? Thank you very much. With that, I'd move to approve C7, request for permission to contract with St. Paul Youth Services for Behavioral Specialist Program Supports SY 2021 through 22. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. That was seconded by Director Carrillo. Vote, please.
Director Allen?
Yes.
Director Kopp? Yes. Director Carrillo?
Yes.
Director Ellis is yes. Director Vu?
Abstain.
Director Foster?
Yes.
Director Broderick?
Yes.
Motion passes with a 6 vote, one abstain. Next, excuse me, on the agenda is old business, which includes the second reading, updates to policy 510, graduation. And I'll turn it over to Superintendent Gothard.
Thank you very much, Chair Foster and members of the board. Tonight we have a second reading of Policy 510, graduation requirements. Looks like I see Director Ginther is making his way up to the presentation table, and he will provide you any additional information and see what questions you have for him this evening.
Chair Foster, members of the board, Superintendent Gothard. We are at our second reading of Policy 510 on graduation requirements. And so really what we're here to talk about is updating our graduation requirements to add critical ethnic studies, those 3 words, to the policy. Anytime we're adding a credit or changing graduation requirements, it needs to be reflected in a policy change as well. So this is how the second section of the policy would read as a small refresher. So as you can see, the 3rd bullet point at the bottom would be adding critical ethnic studies as a graduation requirement in addition to our existing St. Paul Public School requirements and state requirements. With that, this is very brief, but I'd like to open it up to questions after just saying that the next step would be a 3rd and final reading and a vote next month.
Thank you. I open this up for any questions or comments of board members. Director Roger.
Thank you. Thank you, Director Ginther. In an email, 2 different emails that I've sent to you since we had the first reading, and I also sent it to Chief Baker and copied everyone else on the board. I registered my concern that we have done a very an adequate job of publicizing this reading process. And so I think my first question might simply be, what have we done, because this is such a monumental decision, and whenever you add a graduation requirement, it's very important, and it's important obviously first of all to the kids,
but also important to staff and others. Could you tell me a little bit about what you've done to publicize this reading process to staff and the public and others?
Through the chair, Director Broderick, there have been communication out to our social studies teachers through our content leads and through the Office of Teaching and Learning. Our school counselors have been made very well aware. Building principals have been a part of the communication as well. In terms of the graduation requirement, having it not being in place yet, I'd also like to maybe move back to 2018-19 when our SEEB representatives presented to the board. Some were on the board at that time. I think it was monumental then. I think that I'd also add I think the survey that they talked about that really was maybe some of the quantitative drive of this, over 3,000 students responded to the survey. So I think from a student engagement, student voice, they also talked about numerous observations that their classmates had made. So I just wanted to go back maybe to the foundation of where this came from first, and that our students were heavily engaged and their voices amplified by our SEED representatives through that project and plan to make this happen. And so in terms of the reading, as I mentioned, I think we've communicated to some of the stakeholders that you had already addressed about social studies teachers potentially having concerns, counselors as well. And it's not a one and done piece as far as counselors are updated in our weekly updates as well as in person. Well, right now there's still some virtual meetings, but synchronous in nature to talk about what this would mean. And then I think as far as our families go, that would be, I think, a next step as far as really engaging our families and what this means, what the course is about, and what it might mean for your student for graduation requirements.
All right. And of course, I know I made this very, very clear the night of the first reading when we had the wonderful presentation from the people that are actually going to be involved in this course and this coursework. And I want to reiterate once again how much I am in favor of having a critical ethnic studies course in St. Paul. And I also want to echo what Superintendent Gothard has said, that our expectation is that this single course does not satisfy our overall commitment to ethnic studies and to promoting the multicultural diversity kind of thing that this school district has stood for decades. And so I want to make that very clear. I would like to ask you specifically whether you have talked at all with some of our human geography teachers, and whether particularly we've talked about whether we can accommodate having this course added and not cause any collateral damage to a course which is very, very, very important to us, and that is our year-long human geography class, and not just our AP human geography class, but our entire curriculum involving human geography. As most of you, well, many of you may know this, human geography now is one of the most popular undergraduate degrees in colleges across the country, because people that have a human geography background are really, really well prepared to work in the business world and in other areas. And so human geography is a very, very important class. I'm wondering whether you've talked at all to counselors and teachers about the possibility of allowing this required course to be taken over the span, or possibly be taken over a period of the 3 years, 10, 11, and 12, so that it would have less of a negative impact on the course, the human geography course. What I guess I'm really looking for, and I'll look at Superintendent Gothard when I say this, many times we are forced into situations where we seem to be either win-lose or sometimes even lose-lose. But in this particular instance, I think if we spend a little time and effort in terms of working intensely with our counselors and the people who put together schedules, and I know a little bit about that. I was a social studies department chair for many years, and setting up the master schedule for social studies was one of the tasks that I took very, very seriously. Now, my understanding is that the critical ethnic studies course will actually come under the umbrella of a separate department, which I think actually has some great advantages to that. Is that correct, Dr. Gothard?
Through the chair, Director Broderick, yes, that's correct. And I think one of the key pieces or advantages of that as well is we can find the most qualified applicants for that. It's a much broader piece. So someone doesn't need a specific teaching license. It could be broader based on experiences that person has had and the experiences they would bring to the table to be able to teach an ethnic studies course.
And we've talked about the issue, the potential issue with people being properly credentialed to teach a course in a particular brand new department?
Through the chair, Director Broderick, yes. And I think one of the reasons we've been very deliberate, and I think many in OTL, Office of Teaching and Learning, have really done a good job of having 2019, 20, 2021 as far as collaborating with others to make sure we do this right, having the pilot years to learn from the teachers who are doing it, as we heard last month. So yes, I think one of the biggest pieces is how do we keep that open where people are licensed teachers, but keeping it open so that someone with the best lived experiences would be able to come and teach in our buildings.
Okay, and thank you for that, Director Ginther. And I want to actually say that I've talked to some social studies teachers that are not really fully aware of this process taking place right now. And I think that may very well be simply because social studies teachers, and I have to say that when I was a teacher in the classroom, I wasn't attuned automatically to what was going on at the board. And if the board was in the middle of a reading process, this particular social studies teacher may not have known about it. But I would encourage you to make sure that we do have that communication to those people, because I don't see the social studies teachers that I talk to at all being adverse to this program. In fact, they're very, very much in favor of critical ethnic studies. And I think we must take a time to recognize the fact that our social studies teachers and our social studies staffs in our high schools have done a magnificent job of teaching many of the concepts that were so eloquently talked about by John last week or a month ago. And so I think this is all a potential for a win-win situation. I do not see at all that the social studies staff and social studies department, district-wide or within particular schools, feels that they're in competition with this particular class. But I would say, and now I'm going to go back, as I said to Superintendent Gothard a few seconds ago, many times we have win-lose or sometimes even lose-lose situations. In this particular instance, I think this can be a win-win if we can protect the integrity of the human geography course and make sure that kids that want to take human geography have an opportunity to take it in 1 year as a year-long course. And that may be possibly done by allowing the critical ethnic studies course to be taken by kids in their 10th, 11th, or 12th grade. Now, I know that right now I'm right into the weeds of being a micromanager. And I'm trying to tell you folks how to set up a schedule and all that sort of thing. However, I think as a former school teacher and as a department chair and a social studies teacher, I think this is very, very important that we work on this very much. And I'd like to hear a little bit more about that maybe at the third reading. However, it goes without saying, I think that the presentation that was made at the first reading was absolutely fantastic. And I think their explanation of what critical ethnic studies will mean in St. Paul for our students was very well explained. And it also very much countered some of the misinformation that is sometimes floating around the country in terms of the connection between this and this term that's become a catch-all now for many people that are using it politically, and that's critical race theory. But as I have said, I think the more transparent we are, and the more we work on publicizing what we're doing, and the more we openly say, yes, this is what we are doing, and we're doing it for our kids, and particularly kids in a district like St. Paul that is so diverse to begin with. Even the thought that we wouldn't be emphasizing ethnic studies in a school district like St. Paul would be ridiculous. And I think, I guess, a couple quick things, and that is, I want to make sure that we're complimenting the people in our school districts, in our buildings, not just social studies teachers, by the way, although I got a little bias toward them because that's what I was, but the folks in science, as Superintendent Gothard was. I'm sure that the curriculum that he presented in his biology course in Madison, Wisconsin, reflected some culturally proficient ideas and concepts that applied to biology. And I think this is the kind of thing we have to do. And we're doing it. And we heard at the first reading from people that explained it in such an eloquent way that we're doing it wonderfully. And I just want to make sure that we don't keep this under. I don't want this to be the best kept secret since Pearl Harbor. I want this to be publicized and announced that we're doing it right in St. Paul. We're also protecting human geography. And you folks are looking and saying, how long is this Broderick going to talk? Well, probably till the end of December. And then you'll get a break. Unless I come down for public comment. Director Ginther, and if anybody wants to join me on this one, although I may have worn them out already, could you just respond a little bit in terms of, and I wouldn't mind hearing from Superintendent Gothard either, am I haywire in the things that I've just said?
Through the chair, Director Broderick, processing right now.
Should I just mumble for a while you're thinking? Because I'm good at mumbling too.
I would start with in St. Paul. So let's try to capture all of it. Some of the master scheduling things you talked about, being responsive to individual learners with their schedule accommodations potentially, that happens with a lot of graduation requirements. As we talked a little bit about, we have a transient population, students coming in and out of district, so it'll happen there. There are some unique reasons it could happen also, but in the end, it's a graduation requirement, just like any of others, so we need to make sure that our students have it. And we'll work with our counselors on the master scheduling aspects. The other piece I wanted to talk about, no, I don't think we have any reason we intend to keep this under wraps. I think that we are going through the process of the policy reading, and as it becomes policy, then blasting out a lot more consistent communication with this as we're leading into next year, both with our students, our families, our community, and then the staff on the ground level that are going to make this happen with our teachers, our counselors, our administrators. So all in all, I don't think we have any intentions of keeping this under wraps. In fact, I think the opposite. And so there are plans to try to do more of a holistic communication with a whole lot of people to ensure that people are on the same page. Because what I'll also add is when these pieces come out and the policies get put into place, we've got a lot of schools, we've got a lot of people that we need to be on the same page so that people adhere to what this is as well. And people are also communicating in common language of why critical ethnic studies is important and valuable and how it's going to potentially impact students and which students it impacts and how it impacts them. And then the last thing I would just address is you mentioned students going into college for potentially human geography majors. I certainly think as counselors, They are going to support students in meeting that graduation requirement. If they have a student in 10th grade or 11th grade that knows where they want to go, and then getting them into other options to really continue exploring it. So just like critical ethnic studies should not be a one and done experience, neither should any field a student's going to go into. We want to make sure that we have an individual plan for each and every student.
Thank you very much, Director Ginther. And just maybe to explain to anyone that was listening to me with my animated uh, comments, I did so because I feel perfectly comfortable on a personal basis with you, Director Ginther. And I know that the response that you were going to give me was what is what I wanted to have, and that's what I did here. And the other thing is, I think that this also, the fact that I spoke in the manner that I spoke, I think is so important to me, because I think this is what we need to make sure we never lose in St. Paul. And I don't think we have. But we never want to lose that ability for old, ancient school board members to speak their piece at a board meeting, and for a first or second year school teacher, a rookie, being able to speak their piece also to their supervisors and the people that they work for. And that's one of the reasons why I spoke in the manner that I spoke. And I knew that I was speaking to someone, and this is meant as a personal compliment to you, Director Ginther. And last time when Chief Baker was involved, I know that you appreciate this, because one of the things that we, as Director Castillo said a few minutes ago about the COVID, this is also true about all of our work in St. Paul. We are all in this together. And so, Director Ginther, thank you very much for listening to me. As you probably guess, I'll probably have a couple questions next month at the third reading, but I'll be happy to see critical ethnic studies as a big part of our curriculum in the city of St. Paul, the school district of St. Paul. And thank you also, Chief Baker, for your work last week when we did the first reading. And Superintendent Gothard, I usually ask you to try to bail me out when I've gone into one of my soliloquies. So maybe you can do even a better job of ensuring people out in the public, some of whom may have some uneasiness about this because they're hearing some things that are not quite accurate. And you know what? Maybe with your Madison East Side accent, you can do a better job of assuring folks that this is going to be a good thing for us.
Through the chair, Director Broderick, I guess just real quickly, one thing I'll share is you made the comment about me being a culturally proficient science teacher, which I was not. In the late 90s, early 2000s, there wasn't curriculum emphasis to teach the way that I would teach today. And though I was always working at culturally proficient in terms of relationships, making the relationship between curriculum, learning, pedagogy, and students was very hard to come by with the materials, the traditional materials that I used. I've told many people that I would teach far different today than I did then, that I likely wouldn't use some of the packaged materials, that I was always apt to jump into, and I'd be using other sources. I'd be collaborating with other departments. I'd be working with our critical ethnic studies teachers and looking at the way to break science down from multiple perspectives of students, and especially in a place as beautifully diverse as St. Paul. So a lot of, the support that I am providing to our teams is based on work that I wish I would have been a part of, at that time, and want to continue to support folks. And lastly, to our parents, families, I've not heard from them, from many people, other than saying, we've got to get this done for our kids. I think the opposite is true, that people have been waiting for some big opportunities like this. And as I've stated many times, Director Ginther knows this, that critical ethnic studies can't be the place as a singular that we really look at respecting the histories, stories, backgrounds, traditions of our young people, and we need to start building that into how we do business from the very moment that they step foot into St. Paul Public Schools.
Thank you very much, Dr. Gothard.
Thank you. Other board members, any questions, comments? No, thank you. Anything else, Dr. Gothard? Thank you for that. Thank you, Dr. Ginther. Next on the agenda is new business. Seeing there is none. Next on the agenda is information requests and responses, as well as any items for future agendas. So, any information requests at this time? Responses, Director Allen.
Yes. I've been so patiently awaiting the report from the Ramsey name change because they said it was covered in the fall, and then it snowed the other day. So I'm just hoping that we can get a report real soon. I know that they have to do hit a few more check marks. So I'm hoping that that can happen real quick.
Director Kopp.
Just wondering if we can get I could take this information right now, the date of the next review of the mask mandate. Is that approximately 3 months from now?
Through the chair, Director Cobb, on the mass resolution, on the resolution that you approved, it had the first date before November the 13th. The second would be before January 31st.
Thank you.
Other requests, Director Allen. Excuse me, Ellis.
I just wondered when we would get some information about why did I just blank? 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, so then I'll go to my other thing that I was going to ask about because I just lost it.
I can't laugh yet.
What? It's the lights. I'm sure it's the lights. Wanted to ask about our career and college pathways as we're getting ready for, the spring, thinking about students and opportunities that they have and some of the work that our team is doing. I think as the last couple of years have not been ideal and a lot has happened, just wondering how are we talking about potential career paths for our students going forward. I was thinking about the presentation that we had on solar, and they were talking about the differences and the trajectories of some of the careers that we think about now and what may be still coming and being created. And so I was just like, having checked into a few places, trying to get back into the swing of like college career pathways and thinking about it for my own kiddo as well. Just how are we talking about that as we're fully back in school, as we're still in pandemic, and we still have young people who are about to go out into the world, and what does the workforce look like, and how are we having conversations? So that was one question and presentation that I would very much look forward to. And then when we would be finding out when school choice fair, virtual or in person, is happening, and update information.
Director Burns, if you want to address the board, if we have that date and we're ready to publicize it, I would entertain you to share that.
Thank you. Chair Foster, members of the board, Superintendent Gothard. Clerk Ellis, the virtual or the school choice fair for 2022 will be held on Saturday, January 23rd at the River Center. It will be in person, and we are working diligently with schools and vendors right now to make that a safe and effective event. Again, on Saturday, January 23rd at River Center.
Time
frame for that day?
Yes.
No, the time.
I know that. To be determined. Typically, we start
Okay.
mid to late morning, so we allow our schools to load in and put their best foot forward and prepare for a very full day for our families here in St. Paul. We will also be printing, we are developing now, and in production, we will be printing a school selection guide with the input of the team from Family Engagement as well as the Student Placement Center. So, and all of that information will be fully translated and available on our website, posted as well. So we've got the full guide, something physical that we will make available to families, as well as the in-person school choice fair on the 23rd. Thank you.
Seat 16.
Go ahead.
So I wanted to add on to
Director.
Director Ellis's request around career and pathways. I was in the career and pathways office last week, and there was a young brother in there, so immediately I started talking to the young brother about HBCUs. He didn't know what one was. He had never even heard of such thing. So I had to make a little list, give him some homework, and I asked the coordinator in there, what resources did we have to support him? And she pointed to 4 flags on the wall. So can we somehow invest in some resources so that students can at least have tools to know where to search, what to find, things that might intrigue them, information around HBCUs. This was in the heart of Central High School. The only resources they had were 4 HBCU flags. That was very, very disappointing to me. So I gave the brother some homework. I will be following up with him. He hopped right on his computer and started looking things up, so he was very interested once I gave him the information. But we need to have things readily available, and that needs to be an ongoing conversation with our African American students so that they know that there is spaces where their voices can be heard and understood even beyond St. Paul Public Schools.
Director Ellis, your light is on. Are you?
I might come back to something at the end.
And
No, that's good.
And also thinking about college and career pathways, I am just thinking, we've gone through 18 months of COVID, 2 years of coming back. Thinking about the partnerships we have with our trades folks and with the banking folks where we are doing internships and on-job training and in those spaces and places. With that, we also report about what we've continued through, or if we've had to scale down, scale back, if we're scaling back up. I'm just wondering about those partnerships and any others like that that might not be, that are part of that college and career track, just to get a feel. We know COVID changed a lot of things, but I do know that some of those programs worked through COVID and got very creative with how they were doing things with kids, and just to kind of hear that. So again, it also highlights our partners, highlights the work, and also shows us how we get creative around here, keep things going. The ands that happen. We had COVID and we still did A, B, C, and D. So.
Chair Foster, if I could add quick, and I'm sure Director Ginther is smiling under that mask back there. I think you'll all be surprised at how much actually did take place in college career readiness during the pandemic. There were some ways that the teams and experiences adapted that are incredible that I know Darren and his team will be really happy to share with you, and some great resources that we're going to be sharing in the very near future for next year with our families as well. So perfect timing. Director Ginther, get ready.
Director Vu, then Ellis.
Yes, I'd like an update on our transportation, particularly with the Metro State, not Metro State, but Metro Transit.
That's my number.
I know it's mine too. but I need more than just we're doing fine. However we evaluated transportation before, I know that we're outsourcing to Metro Transit, but can we come up with some metric to determine how effective that is? I'm concerned about winter coming in, maybe some folks having to walk further than others to get to their stop. I'm concerned about some travel time may take longer than other routes. Just something for us to determine how feasible it is going forward, knowing that this work shortage for bus drivers may continue throughout the rest of the year and possibly even further. Thank you.
And Director Ellis, additional information requests or responses? All right. Next is the Board of Education reports and communication. I'll open it up to board members who would like to share at this time. Director Ellis.
All right, so I got to attend Humboldt's soccer game at US Bank Stadium, which was really fun. They came in second. Um, it was really, really a cool experience to see our students play there. I thought the Mayor's Cup was fun at Allianz, and that was fun. But like at US Bank Stadium, it was just great to see the kids play. I I was trying to encourage my young person sitting next to me to play soccer, and he said that wasn't his sport. So, but it was just a lot of fun to see. The boys did not score, but the fact that they were there and got to play it was just a really, like, after everything, right? Like, you still played together as a team, worked really hard until the very end, trying to pull it out, and just overall played well. And I had seen them play several times this year. And so just to see them there it was amazing. I had the best time. Um, I also got to see Highlands volleyball team play at Excel, and that was a really hard game. But they played with a whole lot of heart. It did not turn out the way I imagined that they thought it would, but it was still really good to see them play. Um, I'd never been to like the state tournament for volleyball, and it's like multiple games happening at the same time. So it was like, wait, nothing happened here. Why are they cheering over here? So it was really hard to like track some of that. And so it was like they were doing a starting lineup on the other side of the screen, but like Highland was playing against Marshall. And so it was like trying not to watch both games and focus on Highland, but it was really good to be wearing my red and white and cheering for Highland. Way to go, girls. It was really fun to watch them play, and I was heartbroken for them, but they were great because they got to that place, and not every team makes it there, right? That's what where they strive to get to, and not every team makes it there. Um, I went to the soul release ceremony for Chair Marnie Zhang and got to spend some time with their family. Saw Director Carrillo there, Vice Chair Vu, the superintendent, and Chief Baker. It's really good to see Marnie's family again. Really hard, for sure, but remembering her well and laughing at lots of the stories that were shared about her. Just her energy and her positivity and her beliefs in social justice and equity, and just being able to gather with people who knew Marnie and loved her was just it was a really emotional and sad and uplifting experience. Um, yeah, uh, it there are lots of highs in this last month, but like the being able to just sort of sit with Marnie's family and be with them and connect again was really good. So I just wanted to share that with everyone. I miss her. I think about her every day. It's really hard for me to come into this building every time we have a board meeting because there's a part of me that still expects to see her here.
Thank you. Director Cobb.
Thank you, Chair Foster. This last month, pretty much every pocket of time has been devoted to studying and understanding the Envision SPPS recommendations through a multitude of inputs. And I just wanted to share my gratitude first for district staff and the time you have spent not just in presentations, but in small groups and personal conversations as board members have worked to understand some of the details and the nuance. Been really grateful for your expertise in this. Next week, I'll complete the site visits I set out to do. It's not the way you want to get to know schools, but I will say that just a huge thank you to the principals and the educators and the students and the families who I got to meet at those sites. I will tell you that there are many principals out there who think they have the very best staff, and they're all right. Um, their love and their pride in their school is so brilliant and beautiful, and I was just really honored to be able to be a part of that with them. Also want to thank our community. Lots of phone calls, personal meetings, email conversations, virtual meetings, and thank you for the opportunity to learn from you, to help me see things that I might miss from where I'm sitting. That's been really valuable. And also for trusting me with your stories and your hurt and your pain and your hope too. Um, you know, I've lived that experience of being in an unsustainable school, and I've talked here about that knot in your stomach, and I know it's still there, and I know how that feels, and I just wanted to share that I really, as I take my responsibility seriously to learn all I can so I can make a good decision, and I'm going to continue to do that through December 1st and beyond, because this doesn't end December 1st. We move into a new phase. And so from the bottom of my heart, I'm just grateful for all I've learned and experienced through a difficult time.
Thank you. Any others? Director Carrillo.
Yes, I think this is my last official Board of Education meeting. So I wanted to, first of all, take the opportunity because I know that any future meetings that we may have are going to be devoted to Envision. And we'll probably be doing more listening than talking. I wanted to thank every one of you for welcoming me on the board and supporting me. First of all, at the beginning with, just loads and loads of information, loads and loads of support, conversations, time out of your own schedules, time out of your own, day that was already so busy and overwhelmed with so many of the issues that we're dealing with, to just say, hey, whatever you need, we're here to support you. And I want to, from the bottom of my heart, I want to say thank you. You guys have demonstrated true commitment to the democratic values of, transparency, of willing to step in for the rights of the people in St. Paul to be able to have a full board, and for that that really thankful to be able to participate in this process. And some of the times have been hard, some of the times have been really good, some of the times have been contentious, but I take everything with a very glad heart. Like I'm really thankful for all of you. All the people who have come and spoken, I'm thankful to all the staff members who have presented and all the work that you put in, and Superintendent Gothard for your continuous support and and concern and questions and the one-on-ones that we've had, and for all of you who have been here. Yeah, I'm just really thankful. This was a small portion of time in terms of the tenure of a normal seat, which is 4 years. But I just wanted to say that I hope I honored this seat well enough, and I'm really looking forward to partnering with you. Who knows, potentially sitting down here again in the future. But most importantly, as a citizen, I will always be a citizen, regardless whether I'm sitting here, standing there, or just giving you calls and letting you know, guys, that you're doing great. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Gothard actually wants to clap, but we have a December 1st meeting, and I think I could speak on behalf of this board right now. It has been an honor and a privilege to serve with you. You have brought a skill set to this board, your analytical mind. You have been passionate and you have pushed each of us in this administration. You have listened and been open and compassionate. You have done what we all are here to do, challenge the system to do better for the outcomes of this kid and celebrate it and embrace what is going well in this district. And we thank you for that. This service, as you now know, is not easy. There are tons of decisions that we are making for a whole entire community. You've been yelled at and beat up in so many different ways, and you have stayed. I thank you too for being willing to sit and continue to be a member to finish out this current process. You could have walked away, and so thank you for that. If board members have anything to say, I can say that on behalf of us, or Dr. Gothard, anybody else. It is so important that people don't understand when you get in this role that there is a toll to this work. It is done in gratitude and happiness because you know what the work is and you get in it. If you're in it for the right reasons, you're taking on those burdens, those challenges, those joys, whatever it is coming to this. But the reality of it and how it impacts you personally, your family, and the totality of things, a lot of people won't understand until they are doing the work and digging into it. Many people say this, the board should be a full-time job. I totally agree, because in this role, as you all know, you've all been working full-time, getting through this process. So to know that's an investment in our community, in our staff, and our kids. And so thank you for that. And thank you to your family, your wife, and your kids for the time they've allowed you to be here and doing this work with us. Anybody else? And look, I didn't even cough once through that. Vice Chair Fu.
Yeah, just very quickly, Director Carrillo, I'm someone who sat in your seat before. I served very briefly as an interim board member, and I can say with certainty that you've gone above and beyond what is expected of an interim board member. Most time we just expect someone to keep the seat warm, support the work that's going on, and don't rock the boat. But like I said, you pushed us to be better. You pushed the administration to be better, and you supported me here and in the community, and I appreciate you, and I thank you.
Director Carrillo, on behalf of administration and staff, thank you for your service. You came on at a time that I don't think any of us really knew what we were going to face in the midst of a pandemic. And you absolutely have served with great honor in terms of some of the local and immediate issues that you've had to deal with. And I think you've done it in a way that represents the very best of what I've always hoped to work in these difficult decisions, and just really appreciate it. I remember the first text message I sent you after you were appointed. I can't remember how that whole thing went. And you said, "Oh, I'm good for now." And I knew that would be very short-lived in terms of the information. And that the staff was all ready to onboard you. And one thing I hope is that you continue to take this work and grow it in a way that you continue to engage as you've shared with us, and never be a stranger. You're part of SPPS as a parent, as a citizen, and who knows what relationships in the future. So thank you.
Thank you. Information. Excuse me. Report outs. No. I circle back to myself and just again express thank you to leadership and to this board and to you, Superintendent Gothard, and to the greater community. I've been down for the count the last few weeks, but I have felt the support and the love. Actually, I've only gotten my voice back probably the last 4 days. I say thank you for the phone calls, the text, and sorry to the phone calls where all you heard me was spewing my guts and saying, "I gotta get off the phone with you now. Thank you very much." The flowers, just the information updates, responding to text and emails as I was asking for information. I've sat and watched most meetings. Some y'all went a little long, and when you're sitting on the other end, there really is a difference. Um, just gonna say thank you, community, for hanging in there on those long nights. Um, and yeah, I just, the one thing I will say is, as we talked about vaccinations, I'm not a big vaccination person, and I believe in the right to choose what's best for you and your family. But I truly believe, because I walk in the circle with families and kids every day all across this community, I got vaccinated just for my personal safety, for the safety of others, and I believe it saved my life. If I can't say nothing else, I thought I was going to die, and I believe vaccinations saved my life. And while I was down there in the hospital, I thought about Marnie and what we had experienced, and I thought about what her father has to think with and live with every day. Because it's a disease that makes you suffer through it. So I am on the mend and back. I will be here to fulfill my duties as chair. I will cough and bark. I am getting back to starting to return calls and messages. Note, I will be listening more than talking, but I still want to continue to be there to be able to be ears for you. Just thank you to each and every one of you. Your leadership matters, and it's important. And it's nice looking in on you guys and seeing it. You guys are some phenomenal rock star people. I can't say that enough. Thank you. Thank you, guys. Next on the agenda is the future meeting schedules. As a reminder, the board will hold its first public hearing on Envision SPPS on Tuesday, November 30th, beginning at 5:30 p.m. The board will hold a special Envision SPPS meeting on Wednesday, December 1st, 2021 at 6:05 p.m. The board's next committee of the board meeting will be held on Tuesday, December 7th, 2021, beginning at 4:30 p.m. The next regular meeting of the Board of Education will be held on Tuesday, December 14th, 2021, beginning at 6:05 p.m. with public comment to begin at 5:30. We invite members of the community to view the website for updates to be added to the mailing list of public notices or to submit public comment for public hearing and regular meetings of the Board of Education through one, leaving messages with the board secretary at sarah.doggy@spps.org or calling 612-434-1105. That will be compiled and distributed to board members, and or by two, sending email statements to the Board of Education email sb.members@spps.org, or three, by submitting comments via public comment input form online at www.spps.org/BOE, or by attending a live public comment prior to the December 14th regular meeting. Future board meetings and audio stream links for open board meetings can be found online at the board website, www.spps.org/BOE, or by calling our board secretary at 612-434-1105. With that, I would move to adjourn. Do I have a second? Second. Thank you. That was seconded by Director Ellis. Vote, please.
Director Allen,
Yes.
Director Kopp,
Yes.
Director Carrillo,
Yes.
Director Ellis is yes, Director Vu,
Yes.
Director Foster,
Yes.
Director Broderick.
Yes.
That motion passes unanimously with 7. The time is now 7:46, and we are adjourned. 7:46. We are adjourned. Thank you.